Hey there, deep divers. Buckle up, because today we're taking a trip into the world of time travel conspiracies.
Time travel? Who doesn't love a good time travel story, right?
Right, and we're not talking about your average sci-fi flick here.
No, we're going deep down the rabbit hole.
Exactly. We're diving into the murky waters of Projekt-Cronos and the Chronovisor.
Ah, yes. Names that send shivers down your spine or make you raise an eyebrow depending on how you view these things.
So for this deep dive, our main source is this YouTube video from the Society of Parapsychological Studies channel.
They interviewed a professor who claims to have some insider knowledge about these projects.
And let me tell you, his story is wild.
Yeah.
Like buckle up buttercup kind of wild.
It is a wild ride, but it's a good one.
So let's start with Projekt-Cronos. Paint us a picture.
All right, so picture this. The 1930s, President Roosevelt decides, hey, let's get some of the smartest people on the planet together.
Okay, I'm intrigued already. This sounds like the beginning of a superhero movie.
In a way, it kind of is. We're talking about Enrico Fermi, Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, and later on, Wernher von Braun.
Hold on, you're throwing out names like Tesla and Einstein like it's nothing. These are giants of science.
Oh, they were, and according to our source, they were brought together for a top-secret mission to crack the code of time travel.
Time travel?
Huh?
Okay, things just got real.
They believed that time wasn't just this linear thing, ticking away. It was a form of energy.
Energy. So you're saying they thought they could harness time, like electricity?
That's the idea. They
Well,
believed it could be manipulated and controlled.
And how exactly did they plan to do that? Did they have a time-traveling DeLorean hidden in a lab somewhere?
Well, not quite a DeLorean, but they had some pretty radical theories about gravity being the key.
Gravity. How does gravity tie into time travel?
They theorized about these particles called chronotrons, which they thought were like time particles, and another particle called the graviton that they thought they could use to control those chronotrons.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Time particles and gravitons. It's like something straight out of Star Trek.
It does sound pretty sci-fi, doesn't it? But these were serious scientists exploring these concepts.
So if gravity was the key, what was the power source? Did they build some giant gravity harnessing machine?
That's where things get even more interesting. According to our source, the power source came from a rather unexpected place.
Don't tell me they were using hamsters on wheels to generate gravity waves.
Not quite. The story goes that back in the late 1800s, a spacecraft crashed in Aurora, Texas.
Wait, a spacecraft? You mean like an alien spacecraft?
That's what our source claims. And this craft supposedly had this advanced power source, perfect for what Projekt-Cronos needed.
Hold on, so we've got presidents, geniuses, and now aliens. This is one heck of a conspiracy cocktail.
It's a potent mix, that's for sure.
So what was the ultimate goal of Projekt-Cronos? Were they trying to conquer the world with their time-traveling army of alien-powered robots?
Their initial goal was actually quite ambitious. They wanted to prevent wars by manipulating events in the past.
That's a noble goal, I guess.
Yeah.
But also kind of messing with the whole space-time continuum thing, right?
Exactly. And according to our source, those early attempts were a bit of a disaster.
What do you mean, disaster? Were they accidentally erasing historical figures or causing paradoxes left and right?
Well, they ran into some serious problems. The objects they were sending through time kept losing their integrity and never reached their intended destination.
So it's like sending a message in a bottle, but the bottle keeps shattering before it reaches the other shore.
That's a great analogy. And then there's the whole paradox problem. Imagine going back in time and accidentally preventing your own birth. Yikes.
Time travel headaches, for sure. So did they just give up on the whole thing after these initial setbacks?
Well, not exactly. That's where Wernher von Braun enters the picture.
The rocket scientist who helped develop the V-2 rockets for the Nazis.
The very same. After World War II, he ended up in the U.S. as part of Operation Paperclip, which recruited former Nazi scientists.
Wow, so we've got some Cold War intrigue mixed in now. This is getting juicy.
Oh, it gets even juicier. Von Braun's expertise, along with other brilliant minds like Oppenheimer, helped Projekt-Cronos make some serious progress.
So they weren't deterred by those early setbacks. They kept pushing forward.
They did. But navigating through time was still a major hurdle.
You mean like knowing where and when they were going?
Yeah.
Avoiding those pesky paradoxes?
Exactly. They decided to aim for alternate universes to avoid those paradoxes, slightly different versions of our reality.
So like a multiverse situation.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But pinpointing a specific destination in time, even in another universe, was incredibly difficult.
Okay, so how did they solve that problem? Do they have a cosmic GPS or something?
Well, this is where things take another interesting turn. That's when they brought in Father Pellegrino Ernetti.
Father who now?
Father Pellegrino Ernetti, an Italian priest and a specialist in sound frequencies.
Okay, a priest specializing in sound frequencies. Now that's a curveball I wasn't expecting.
Apparently, they needed these very precise acoustic frequencies to guide the travelers to their intended destination in time.
So like a sonic GPS for the time-space continuum.
You got it. And guess what? This priest's expertise in sound frequencies would later lead to the development of the chronovisor.
Wait, hold on. You're saying the same priest who helped them with time travel navigation also built a time viewing device?
That's what our source claims. The chronovisor was essentially a spin-off of Projekt-Cronos.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
Mm-hmm.
We've got time-traveling astronauts, a time-viewing device, secret government projects, and a priest who's basically a sonic engineer. This is insane.
It certainly is a lot to take in, but remember, we're dealing with claims and speculation here.
Of course. But let's be honest, a little healthy skepticism never hurt a good conspiracy theory right.
You've got that right. So are you ready to dive into the nitty-gritty of the chronovisor and see how this time-viewing device supposedly worked?
Oh, you know I am. Bring on the temporal weirdness. Okay, so last time we were talking about this priest, Father Ernetti, and how he was brought in to help with Projekt-Cronos.
Yeah, his expertise in sound frequencies was apparently crucial for navigating through time.
Right, like a sonic GPS for time travelers. But then he went on to supposedly build the Chronovisor, a device that could let you view past events.
That's right. And if our source is to be believed, it actually worked. They were able to see glimpses of the past.
That's mind-blowing. But what was it like?
Wow.
Was it like watching a movie on a screen? Or more like looking through a foggy window?
Well, according to the professor, the clarity of the images varied depending on the time period they were trying to view.
So some periods were easier to tune into than others. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like trying to get a clear signal on an old radio. Sometimes you get static and sometimes you get a perfect broadcast.
Makes you wonder what determined the reception for different time periods. Was it something about the event itself or the way the chronovisor worked?
That's a good question. And unfortunately, the details in our source are a bit vague on that point.
So we're left with more questions than answers, I guess. But hey, that's part of the fun of exploring these conspiracies, right?
Exactly. It's all about piecing together the puzzle and seeing what kind of picture emerges.
Okay, so let's get back to Projekt-Cronos. We heard about those early attempts at sending objects through time and how they ran into all sorts of problems.
Yeah, they had issues with the objects losing their integrity and the whole paradox conundrum.
Right, like accidentally preventing your own birth.
Not good.
So did they eventually figure out a way to make time travel safe and reliable?
Well, according to our source, they made some progress, but it came at a cost.
What do you mean cost? Like they had to sacrifice something to make it work?
Not in a ritualistic sense, but they discovered that time travel had some pretty severe side effects on the human body.
Side effects? Like what?
Mm-hmm.
Temporal jet lag? Wrinkles from time displacement?
Think more along the lines of accelerated aging. The astronauts who allegedly traveled back in time returned with their cells severely depleted.
So time travel literally took years off their lives.
That's
terrifying.
It is. And this discovery might be one of the reasons why they shifted towards using robots and androids for their time travel experiments.
Yeah, makes sense. Robots don't age. But were they able to overcome the technical difficulties they had with sending objects through time?
Well, even with the robots, they still encountered challenges. The professor mentioned that their electronics would become increasingly unstable the further back in time they traveled.
Really? So even robots weren't immune to the perils of time travel?
It seems that way. Almost as if time itself was resisting their intrusions.
That's a pretty unsettling thought. Like time has its own defense mechanisms to protect itself from being tampered with.
It's a fascinating concept, isn't it? And it raises all sorts of questions about the nature of time and whether it can truly be manipulated.
Definitely. But let's move on to something a little less spooky for a moment. What about the chronovisor? If ever could actually see the past, what kind of impact did that have?
Well, think about it. Imagine being able to witness historical events firsthand, to see how things really happened.
Yeah, that would be incredible. To see the signing of the Declaration of Independence or the building of the pyramid.
Exactly. The potential for historical understanding would be immense. It could change everything we know about the past.
But wouldn't that also create a lot of chaos and uncertainty? What if what we saw through the chronovisor contradicted our current understanding of history?
That's a valid point. And it's one of the many ethical dilemmas that arise when you start talking about time travel.
It's like opening Pandora's box. You might find answers, but you might also unleash a whole lot of problems.
And that leads us to the question of secrecy. If these technologies really existed, wouldn't governments want to keep them under wraps?
Absolutely. The potential for misuse is enormous. Imagine someone using time travel for their own personal gain or to alter the course of history.
Precisely. And that's where the theory of a cover-up comes into play.
Right, the idea that governments are deliberately suppressing information about time travel to prevent panic or chaos.
Exactly. They might be using disinformation and misinformation to throw people off the scent.
So are we just supposed to believe that time travel is real, but we're being kept in the dark about it?
Well, it's important to remember that we're dealing with a lot of speculation and conjecture here. There's no concrete evidence to prove or disprove any of these claims.
Fair enough. But it's certainly fun to consider the possibilities, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes this deep dive so intriguing.
So what happens next in our time travel saga? Do we find out what happened to Projekt-Cronos and the Chronovisor?
That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned as we unravel the mysteries surrounding the alleged cover-up and the possibility that time travel might be happening right under our noses.
This is getting good. I can't wait to hear what you have to say next.
Okay, so we've heard a lot of wild stories about time travel.
Yeah, from presidents and popes to aliens and secret government projects.
But the question remains, is there any truth to any of this, or are we just caught up in a really good yarn? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've got these tantalizing claims, but so far, no concrete evidence.
Right. It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of smoke and mirrors.
It's a shaky foundation, for sure. We have to remember that a lot of this is based on one person's account. And while his story is compelling, it's important to maintain a healthy dose of skepticism.
Totally. But let's say for a moment that time travel is real. Wouldn't governments have a vested interest in keeping it under wraps?
Oh, absolutely. Can you imagine the implications for national security, for global power?
Right. If a country could control time, they could basically rewrite history to their liking.
Exactly. It would be like having the ultimate weapon.
So maybe the idea of a cover-up isn't as far-fetched as it seems.
I mean, if you were in charge of a secret time travel project, wouldn't you want to keep it hush-hush?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But how would they do that? I mean, how do you hide something as big as time travel?
Think disinformation, misinformation, propaganda. Usual tools of the trade.
So they'd basically be trying to muddy the waters and make it impossible to know what's real and what's not.
Exactly. It's a classic strategy for protecting sensitive information.
Okay, so assuming there's a cover-up, what does that mean for Projekt-Cronos and the Chronovisor? Are they still out there somewhere?
The professor in our source material claimed that Projekt-Cronos was shut down, but that the knowledge gained from it was absorbed into other, more clandestine projects.
So it's like the project went dark, but the research continued in secret.
That's the suggestion. And as for the Chronovisor, well, its fate remains a mystery.
So it could be sitting in a vault somewhere gathering dust, or maybe it's still being used to peek into the past.
It's fun to speculate, isn't it?
Totally. It's like we're living in our own little time travel conspiracy thriller.
And who knows, maybe there's more truth to these stories than we realize.
Maybe. But for now, we're left with more questions than answers.
That's often the case with these kinds of topics. But that's also what makes them so fascinating. They challenge us to think outside the box and to question what we believe to be true.
Well said. I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today.
I hope so. It's important to keep an open mind about these things, but also to be critical and to do your own research.
And to remember that sometimes the most intriguing stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
Exactly. It's the mystery that keeps us coming back for more.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the world of time travel conspiracies.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Keep those minds curious and never stop exploring the unknown.